I can see for someone like yourself, right? And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you also participate in some of these, what we might call psionic protocols, right? So you yourself have tested this. You think it works, and right. So am I getting that right? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
You could say I'm a professional, right?
Okay.
Probably
Yeah.
more experienced than people who are psionic assets.
Well, okay. Oh shit. Okay. Yeah, I remember briefly talking about that in our interview before. I should have watched that, to be honest with you, before I sat down with you again. But yeah, let's kind of dive into that a little bit, because I saw you tweet out that you had made a couple videos um, about this on your channel, and you kind of, retweeted them out, right? Like, hey, check this out. So let's jump into that. So you also have these abilities. I don't know the right terminology here to use. So I know, I'm sorry. I want to be respectful about it. So just kind of, I'll just let you take over here a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, I mean, the main takeaway, and I wish I had the tweet in front of me, is actually, no, because what I said is like, you do not need to be a psionic asset or a P3 operator to engage the phenomenon, right? You do
yeah,
not. You don't have to be special. This is one thing that I think we talked about
you don't have
last
to be
time,
left-handed or
or bi or gay
bi
or
or gay. Yeah,
whatever. None of that
sure.
matters. And I'm an
Okay.
example of that, because I'm like Mr. Basic, super normal, average, work 40 hours, well, 60 hours a week, 70 hours a week, whatever, go home to my kids and stuff and live my life stuff.
Yeah.
I'm as basic and normal as it gets. I don't think I'm neurodivergent. I could be, maybe a little bit here or there. But I don't have anything special or remarkable about me, in the sense where like I'm different, that I can do this. I'm experienced, right? I mean, kind of what sparked everything for me was my early experiences. So that kind of cracked me open, right? But other
Yeah.
than that, um, I don't have like, I've had psionic experiences, but I don't consider myself a psionic individual, right? I wouldn't consider myself like, oh wow, man, this guy is like super intuitive. Like, not really.
Okay.
But
That's
hey,
interesting.
CE5, I have a knack for it. I'm just gifted
Got it.
in the sense, but it's effort, time and effort, right?
That you've put in practicing the protocols and
Yeah.
learning, and right, essentially like a
Yeah.
sport, right? That's kind of how I
Yeah.
described it in a recent video I did. You got to practice at it to get better at it, essentially.
So yeah, so it's the same thing with whether you're talking about meditation, psionics, out of body experiences, remote viewing. Everything it's time and effort, right? It's
Sure.
practice. Inevitably, if you throw a rock at a target and a bullseye or a dart or whatever it is 1,000 times, you're going to hit the bullseye eventually. It's just a matter of probability. And
Sure.
you hit the bullseye enough times, you're going to kind of think, oh wait, how did I do that? Right?
Yeah.
You're going to get a feel for it.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I mean, when people put it that way, that does make sense. Here's something that I've thought about recently is all of that makes sense what you're saying. The problem, and people say, okay, Pat, well, just try it. You can go try it yourself. And we probably even talked about that on our last podcast. And I've had people mention it to me. But see, I keep running into this wall. And the wall is, I don't know what this phenomenon is, if it's real, and it's, and people like yourself believe it to be 100% real. I haven't crossed that line yet. But if it is real, then no one can guarantee my safety if I try this, right? To make
Right.
some sort of mental connection with an entity that we know nothing about sounds like jumping out of a plane with no parachute. So do you not worry about that yourself, or how do you
So
explain that to someone who wants to try it?
yeah, so in the videos that I posted, which maybe you can include in the description,
100%.
uh,
Absolutely.
I include a disclaimer in the first one. It's called An Introduction to Contact Work. And contact work is the same thing as psionic. It's the same thing as CE5. And I include a disclaimer because for me, I didn't have a choice, right? I had experiences already. So At that
I
point, I
see.
was just continuing the conversation. I want to know what happened to me, why it happened to me. Um, I was already in the ocean, so to speak. So I just wanted to be able to
Sure.
navigate it.
Sure.
So, you know, for somebody who hasn't experienced it, I do put a disclaimer and say, like, you can have the most beautiful and wonderful experience, and it can still have a very uh, like disruptive impact in your life. It can be look at Jake Barber, right? He had explains his beautiful experience, but you can see that he's been through some shit, right?
Yeah. Sure.
He clearly, and it might not be the experience itself, but the paradigm shift now is like, you know, you could have this extraordinary, beautiful experience with this non-human intelligence, and when you automatically have this sensation or knowing that everything is in the universe is one, or whatever whatever kind of experience you have, an awakening experience, and then all of a sudden, like, try to explain that to your spouse and see how that goes. See if it doesn't mess up your marriage, right? See if it doesn't make your family say you're nuts. I mean, I was lucky in the case my family saw a lot of this stuff firsthand with
Yeah.
me. Um, but if they hadn't, and I tried to explain this, they might like think, I don't know what's going on with them.
Yeah.
Try telling this to your friends. Talk about it at work. See how that goes. Um, there's a lot of way. You might just say, "What, man? We're not alone in the universe, and this is such an important topic. Like, why am I working this 40 hour job every week? Why? It's meaningless. It has no meaning. I want to go participate in something real that means something. You could just want to go take a trip to India and meditate for months on end, or whatever it is. Like, you could have this positive experience, and it can still be highly disruptive in your life.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
Or you can have an experience with non-human intelligence, and because of that experience, you've now opened. It's not like you've opened this portal, right? So what happened is your perception and awareness, the aperture is now more open, right? Say it's open 25 degrees more, right? Or 25%. You're going to see and experience maybe other things. Maybe you start to have like poltergeist activity, the hitchhiker effect, or post contact effects. That might mess with you, right? And that you might not have asked for that, but it's a side effect of an encounter. Jacques Vallée had talked about that in Invisible College. You can have a spiritual transformation, right? Who wants to have a spiritual transformation in their mid-30s or 40s when you're working your job and you have your family? It could still mess you up.
Yeah.
For some people, it could be the most positive influence and change in their life, and it can be for all the better. So you have these kind of like either or situations, or in some way it's going to affect you, right? You heard Jake Barber say this was the most beautiful experience in his life that he
Yeah.
had with this entity, this non-human intelligence. You don't know what you're going to get. And when I started the first CE5 social networking groups in around 2009. So I ended up going out and doing field work with hundreds of people doing CE5 and contact work, and non-locally, speaking with thousands of field workers and contact workers over the last 16 years. The general consensus is if you go out with a positive attitude to have a positive encounter with non-human intelligence, like 99% of the time, that's generally what you're going to get, if you get anything at all, right? If to have a negative experience during a CE5, or negative things start happening to you, is possible, but it is a one-off. And I'm just saying that based on I'm informed on the matter.
Sure.
But again, if you're somebody that has a caution about it, don't do it. Don't do it. Nobody's making you do it.
Yeah.
If you have a hesitancy, don't do it. I only would say to the people that have like, I'm going to do it anyways, right? Like, those are the people that should be doing it. The people that there's
Got
no
it.
question in their mind, right? Like, you have a
Sure.
calling to it. You're compelled to do it. Like, you don't care what anybody says, you're going to do it anyway, those are the people I would recommend do it. If you have any reservations, think about it, right? And that also kind of is going to affect your outcomes too, I would say, generally speaking. If you have that kind of conviction that you're just going to go out and do it and whatever, you're usually going to have better results too.
That's fair. See, this is why I like talking. This is why I like talking to you, man, because you know you're open minded even to the skepticism. Like someone like myself who has questions and concerns, like you're very respectful and very cool to talk to about this. And that's the kind of approach I wish more people had in this, instead of just, you're an idiot if you don't want to get. It's like, well, wait a second, just
Yeah.
hang on. We're talking about communicating with other
Right.
potential
Yeah.
other entity. Like,
Yeah.
fuck, can I have some questions here? I mean, I'm cautious of getting on the subway in a city I go to. You know what I mean? Like, I have questions there. Like, this should be some, and doing that kind of travel. We're talking mental travel. So this is what I like about you. This is what I like about your show. This is what I like about talking to you and listening to you, is that you're open to having these sort of conversations and discussing people's other questions they may have, or skepticism, or whatever it may be. And I love that about you, man, to be honest with you. Your show is really good, engaging the phenomena, which totally connects to everything you just said, right? Like, honestly, I think that just hit me while we were talking. That's why you named the show. Dude, I'm such an idiot. Like, it was right. It was right under my nose
Yeah,
the whole
yeah.
time. You
Like
know what I mean?
Robert
Right in
Bigelow
front of me.
said, they're right under it.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, boom, it totally makes sense. And again, I highly recommend people that check out your podcast and watch your show. You do great interviews. You ask great questions. That's what I always say about you. You ask some really good questions that honestly people don't even notice how good they are. You ask really, really good questions because you are so informed. You really come in with just these very poignant questions. So I highly recommend people check out your show and what you do. And again, this is why I do enjoy conversing with you about this.